Welcome back to Whole Bible Study with Taddy Noy. If you're just joining us, we've been walking through the powerful and unfolding journey of the Israelites, freed from Egypt and now navigating life in the wilderness. In the last chapter, we saw the Israelites begin to encounter some challenges, scarcity of water, fear, and uncertainty, but we also saw God respond with provision and grace. Exodus 16 continues that story. The people are hungry, the desert is barren, and once again, God reveals his nature. Not just through power, but through daily provision. Let's read Exodus chapter 16 together. Exodus 16 from the NIV version. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into the desert to starve this entire assembly of death." Then the Lord said to Moses, "I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the sixth day they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days." So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, "In the evening you will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of Egypt. And in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we that you should grumble against us?" Moses also said, "You will know that it was the Lord when he gives you meat to eat in the evening and all the bread you want in the morning, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we? You are not grumbling against us, but against the Lord." Then Moses told Aaron, "Say to the entire Israelite community, 'Come before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling.'" While Aaron was speaking to the Lord, the whole Israelite community, they looked toward the desert, and there was the glory of the Lord appearing in the cloud. The Lord said to Moses, "I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them, at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God." That evening quail came and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, "It is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Everyone is to gather as much as they need. Take an omer or for each person you have in your tent." The Israelites did as they were told. Some gathered much, some little. And when they measured it by the omer, the one who gathered much did not have too much, and the one who gathered little did not have too little. Everyone had gathered just as much as they needed. Then Moses said to them, "No one is to keep any of it until morning." However, some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until the morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. Each morning, everyone gathered as much as they needed, and then the sun grew hot. It melted away. On the sixth day, they gathered twice as much, 2 omers for each person, and the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. He said to them, "This is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be the day of Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil. Save whatever you have left and keep it until morning." So they saved it until morning as Moses commanded. and it did not stink or get maggots in it. Eat it today, Moses said, because today is a Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any of it on the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath, there will not be any. Nevertheless, some of the people went out on the seventh day to gather it, but they found none. Then the Lord said to Moses, "How long will you refuse to keep my commandments and my instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That is why on the sixth day he gives you bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where they are on the seventh day. No one is to go out." So the people rested on the seventh day. The people of Israel called the bread manna. It was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers like that made with honey. Moses said, "This is what the Lord has commanded. Take an omer of manna and keep it for the generations to come, so they can see the bread I gave you to eat in the wilderness when I brought you out of Egypt." So Moses said to Aaron, "Take a jar and put an omer of manna in it, then place it before the Lord to keep for the generations to come." As the Lord commanded, Moses and Aaron put the manna with the tablets of the covenant law so that they might be preserved. The Israelites ate manna 40 years until they came to a land that was settled. They ate manna until they reached the border of Canaan. An omer is 1/10 of an ephah. Now for the deep dive, Exodus chapter 16. Exodus chapter 16 invites us into one of the most intimate and formative experiences between God and his people. An encounter not of thunder or plagues, but of bread in the morning and meat in the evening. It is here in the emptiness of the desert that the divine relationship deepens through rhythms of provision, obedience, and trust. Historically, sociologically, and theologically, this chapter helps us understand how Israel's identity was shaped not just by what they were freed from, but what kind of life they were being formed into. Let's start with the setting. Verse 1 tells us that the Israelites are in the desert of Sin, located between El Elim and Sinai. The name Sin here is unrelated to the English word for wrongdoing. It's likely a derivation of the wilderness region Sinai. Geographically, this would place them along a rugged and arid corridor stretching southeast of Egypt toward the mountainous terrain where they'll soon receive the law. Deserts in Scripture often serve as crucibles of transformation. The wilderness is where provision must be daily. Dependence is total, and distractions are stripped away. The text tells us they've been on the move for about a month and a half since the Exodus, and now, predictably, the people are hungry. In verse 3, we encounter a major grumbling episode of the Exodus journey. This motif of complaint introduced in chapter 15 will continue through Numbers and Deuteronomy. But here it's particularly striking. The Israelites reminisce about Egyptian food, pots of meat, and all the food we wanted. This is a textbook example of historical romanticism, a collective memory shaped by present fear. That's why what they recall as comfort was in fact slavery. The Hebrew word for grumbled is lun, which can also mean to murmur, or even to lodge something overnight, suggesting a kind of brooding unrest that isn't just vocal but rooted. It sets up a powerful theological moment in verse 4 and 5. God responds not with anger but with generosity. He says he will rain down bread from heaven. The phrase evokes both abundance and a miracle. In Hebrew, the verb matar is used for rain, which in agrarian societies was associated with blessing and covenant favor. This is no ordinary food source. This is divine sustenance. But provision comes with a test. God institutes a rule: only gather what you need for the day, except before the Sabbath, when you gather double. This teaches restraint, trust, and obedience. It's a daily exercise of faith. The structure reflects ancient covenant relationships between provision, where provision came with loyalty. Here, the rhythm of provision is tied directly to the rhythm of Sabbath. Verses 14 describes the mysterious food as thin flakes like frost. When the peoples see it, they say, man who? What is it? That question becomes its name, manna. Linguistically, some scholars believe this word has Egyptian roots, possibly from the term menu, meaning gift or portion. Others believe it derives from the Semitic root meaning to a portion or a sign. Either way, the name captures both the mystery and the personal nature of this daily gift. And what about the quail? Verse 13 tells us that the quail arrived in the evening. Historically, quail migrations through the Sinai were common in spring and autumn. Exhausted from their journey across the Mediterranean, the birds could easily be caught. Egyptian and Mesopotamian texts also reference quail as food for nomadic peoples. So where the event is supernatural in its precision and timing, it also uses natural phenomenon, an example of God working through the world he created, not always in contradiction to it. One of the most beautiful parts of this chapter comes in verses 17 and 18, where it says that when the people gathered the manna, the one who gathered much did not have too much, and the one who gathered little did not have too little. Paul quotes this in 2 Corinthians 8:15 when encouraging the early church to practice generosity. It's a vision of equality, of equity grounded in trust, not just provision, but shared provision. In a tribal survivalist culture, this is radical. God is forming a people who are not just sustained by, but shaped by mercy. The rules around storage, no hoarding except before the Sabbath, further highlight the theological theme. When they try to keep it overnight, it rots, but on the sixth day it keeps. The message: God's provision is both dependable and sacred, but only in his rhythm. This calls the people into a liturgical lifestyle where time itself is reordered by God's sustaining presence. Then we get to the institution of the Sabbath rest. This is the first time in the Torah narrative that the Sabbath is tied explicitly to food and practice. It's no longer just a remembrance of creation as in Genesis, but a mark of covenantal living. The people who are told to bake and boil on the sixth day and to do so and to do no gathering on the seventh. This is revolutionary. In most ancient societies, rest was a luxury of the elite. Here it is a divine commandment for all. The poor, the weak, the wanderer, they too are invited into holy rest. The theology of rest becomes a statement of identity. You are not slaves. You are not defined by labor. You are a people whose rest because your God provides. There's a gentle rebuke in verses 27 through 30 when some go out to gather anyway. God's frustration is not punitive, it's parental. How long will you refuse to keep my commandments, he says. This echoes the tone of a patient teacher or a loving parent. The word refuse here is ma'an, meaning to be unwilling. The issue isn't failure, it's resistance. God is showing them, not just telling them, how to trust. Verses 31 through 36 offer a kind of epilogue. Manna is described as white, sweet, and flake-like. like coriander seed and honey wafers. These details may not seem critical, but in ancient culture, food carried theological weight. Texture, taste, and appearance often symbolized divine generosity. That it tasted like honey may also echo the promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey. It's as if the future promises is being tasted now, one bite at a time. The command to preserve a jar of manna for future generations is deeply anthropological. It marks a movement from miracle to memory. Ancient cultures memorized divine events through stone altars, songs, and relics. Here, Israel is commanded to keep a literal taste of God's faithfulness as a physical witness. The manna is eventually placed before the Ark of the Covenant, right alongside the tablets of the law. Provision and instruction side by side, grace and truth. One more note, verse 35 tells us the Israelites ate manna for 40 years. That's an entire generation. Imagine the formative power of this ritual. Every morning going out to gather, trusting that it would be there. Children growing up, never knowing another source of food. An entire culture shaped by dependence and daily trust. Anthropologically, this chapter is the beginning of Israel's transformation from an enslaved people into a liturgical community, a people whose daily life revolves around divine presence. Sociologically, it introduces radical values of rest, equity, and shared sustenance. Theologically, it is about reordering desire, reforming trust, and relearning what it means to belong to a God who provides. And now for some closing reflections. What strikes me about Exodus 16 is how gentle and persistent God is in the face of fear. The Israelites complain, grumble, even disobey, but God continues to provide. He doesn't just give them food, He gives them a way of life. He teaches them to slow down, to trust, to rest, and to share. That's a message I need. Maybe you do too. This chapter invites us to live with open hands, to stop hoarding, stop striving, and believe that grace really is enough for today. It challenges the idea that worth comes from productivity. It reminds us that God's goodness often shows up not in grand gestures, but in quiet daily bread. If this chapter stirred something in you, maybe a new insight or just a sense of awe, I'd love to hear it. Drop a comment. Let's keep learning together. This journey through Scripture is about more than just history. It's about transformation. And I'm so thankful to be walking it with you. Again, thank you for digging into this chapter with me, and we will see you tomorrow in the next chapter.